Outlaw Law is brought to you by Whitaker and Hamer, attorneys and counselors at law. Your law firm for life.
The Outlaw Lawyers, Josh Whitaker and Joe Hamer. You can find them at Whitaker and Hamer Law Firm. They're the managing partners and practicing attorneys here in North Carolina. Raleigh, Garner, Clayton, Goldsboro, Fuquay, Varina, Gastonia, and Morehead City, where you can find their offices, very conveniently located for you. If you've got a situation you're facing legally and you've got questions, you can always contact Whitaker and Hamer, 800-659-1186. That's 800-659-1186. Leave your contact information and briefly what the call's about. An attorney with Whitaker and Hamer will be in touch. And you can always email your questions to the show. We'll answer them on a future broadcast, and we'll use different names to protect the innocent, right? But we'll answer those questions for you. Questions at theoutlawlawyer.com is where you can send those. Again, questions at theoutlawlawyer.com. We're sticking in the NFL, Josh, and it's a big, big topic, protecting the quarterback, concussions, and I guess we'll start with Tua.
Yeah, I saw this happen, when, what were they? It was Miami and the Bills, right? It was the Miami Bills game.
He had back-to-back, so yeah.
Yeah, so it was two situations. He had the initial injury that looked alarming. If on first glance, it looked alarming. They went through the standard concussion protocol. He ultimately was cleared, came back in the game, finished it out, and then the very next week takes another hit and just goes down bad, man, real bad.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw the replays. It was definitely nasty and definitely got his clock cleaned and so NFL's got this concussion protocol that's put in place. They work with the players union on it, and so there's this official. And I haven't read it. I couldn't find it when I looked for it, but there's a concussion protocol. So if someone takes a hit, a certain kind of hit, certain things happen. It's supposed to trigger this protocol where, they get looked at and it's been around for a while, and it's kind of a confusing enigma to the average fan because we don't know what they're, we're not professionals. We don't know what they're looking for. But there was at least an argument that maybe it wasn't followed as it should have been with that first hit, I guess, right? Is that the argument?
Well,
Joe?
no, I think initially there was concern, right? Because you see, like, again, if you're watching and we're just laymen, we're not, we're attorneys, but we're not doctors. And, but anybody watching, even if you're not medically trained, like you could see he takes the hit, he stumbles. There's signs, classic signs that he may have a head injury. So that anybody can see that, right? And then they take him out. They do whatever the testing that they generally would do. He's cleared. He goes back in. Of course, the next week occurs, and then everybody looks back at that. Everybody looks back at the previous week, and they're like, "How is it possible that he got back in the game?" Like, because with these traumatic brain injuries, there needs to be a certain amount of rest prior to re-entering competition because they can be exacerbated if you don't take the time to recover. We still don't know a ton about, we know more than we knew before, but we still don't know everything about these head injuries and how they're going to play out and how you're going to be affected later in life. So a lot of moving pieces to this, but there was an investigation. And if I'm not mistaken, that investigation determined that they actually followed the protocol correctly. There was no issue there, but they've since come out and modified the protocol, and they've added in ataxia, which is basically like a loss of coordination. They've added that to one of the no-go symptoms, where if that's exhibited, then it's basically that ends the question, and it's you're not going back into a game.
Isn't that what happened this past week when Garner's very own Nyheim Hines he took a bad hit and he was having trouble walking?
Yeah, that's going to be the effect of this. You've seen it. It's kind of trickled down the effect. And so one effect is going to be, they're not going to be taking chances, right? So if there's even a remote question, you're probably going to see the players held out. And coming back to the legal side of this, it's really for liability purposes, right? Because you've got these established protocols, and you're not necessarily looking at any kind of laws that are being broken, but you're looking at established protocols for which there can be, civil liability in the event that those aren't followed. So you're going to see people being extra cautious, not just for the legal ramifications, but also for the public perception. I think you're going to see a whole lot less leniency. because football players are tough by nature, right? Like they've done this their whole lives. They want to compete, and they're going to try to get back in the game at all costs, if at all possible. So it used to be someone takes a bad hit, they get up, you just ask them like, "Hey, you good?" They go back in because they want to keep playing. But I think you're going to see they're just not going to take chances. And beyond that, you've also seen recently, if you pay attention, you look at like roughing the quarterback penalties, you look at like targeting calls. All of these changes are kind of trickling down to make the game a little less violent, a little more safe. And I think you're just going to see that effect kind of amplified and increase over time. And the game's really going to, for better or for worse, some people would say for worse because that's what they watch it for. That's what they enjoy. But you're dealing with people's long-term health at the same time.
What was it? And this week, it has nothing to do with concussion protocol, but this week it was, I was watching the Bucks Falcons when the Falcons sacked Brady, and it looked perfectly legitimate, and they threw the flag.
There was a couple of those. There was a couple of real head scratching calls where, they're trying to prevent players, they're trying to prevent like defensive linemen from landing on top of quarterbacks after a sack. But like by the very nature of tackling somebody, like how do you, it's one of those things that's just kind of, it's complicated the game and the process and understanding how to play it for everybody. But at the same time, the health and safety of players is a great concern.
Well, and it's the health and safety of the number one position in football, and that's quarterback. And there are very few men, that can play that position. So they have put these rules in place to try and protect them. The other one that you guys are referring to is Raiders Chiefs when Carr looked like he was going to lose the ball. I think Chris Jones hit him, stripped the ball. Sack. Yeah, stripped the ball and came down on him, and they got the ball back. Even though the Chiefs recovered it, the Raiders got the ball back because they called that penalty, that it was excessive roughing on the quarterback when he didn't even have the football.
Yeah, both of those penalties, both that penalty you're referring to and then the Tom Brady penalty, both massively game-changing penalty calls. And the conspiracy theorists, and you could look at those and look to some strange agenda. But I think in reality, it's all a byproduct of the concern for player safety and how difficult, the rules have become to kind of enforce, especially in real time when you're dealing with some of the fastest, most athletic human beings on the planet. Like making those split-second decisions, I can't. I love to complain about referees and moan about it, but you really have to understand how difficult that's got to be.
Look, man, I refereed 8-9-year-old. I refereed an 8-9-year-old basketball league. It was a basketball league where you helped coach, and then you had to take your turn and be a referee. Madness, man. I will.
Wait, time out. You're not refereeing the same game like your game, are you?
No. You just took turns, so you'd coach,
I'd be out
and
there
then it was
giving out technicals to the other team left and right, man.
you'd run out there and you'd ref another game where two other teams were playing, and everybody just kind of helped out to run the league and save cost. But man, I tell you what, man, 8-9-year-old basketball was a rough one to referee. You wouldn't think so. You think that'd be a little bit easier, but I always feel so bad for the refs, and there's a ref shortage right now, right? In the high school and middle school ranks. It's hard to get refs because they take so much abuse from fans and things like that. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. That's just that's a hard gig. That's all.
How many technical fouls did you give out in your 8-9-year-old ref?
I gave out
career?
no technical fouls, but the game I was reffing, it was 8-9-year-old basketball games are usually like close, like 16, 12, you're not they're not burning up the scoreboard.
You send any parents or other coaches to the car and say, cool off?
I did coach one. I reffed one game where I wasn't the lead ref. There was two of us. I wasn't the lead ref, but we did have to ask somebody to leave because it was just people were just really invested.
People care about their kids' sports, man.
We had this one was a close game, and so somebody had like the last possession. If they scored, they would win. If not, it would go to the little 2-minute overtime or whatever they have. But we had someone who stepped over the line inbounding the ball before we hadn't whistled to be in play yet. So we reset him and gave him a chance to inbound it. And the parent just lost their minds. He thought it should have been a turnover. And I remember thinking that was years ago. That was probably 8 years ago now. But it's tough to do, man. NFL or rec league, that ref spot's a tough one to be in.
Well, getting back to the Tua, specifically discussing Tua, the fact that they did this investigation, they basically determined that they did follow the protocol. He did stumble, but I think he himself actually said that he re-aggravated a back injury, and that's the reason why he stumbled. And if you go and you look at it, like, again, I think on first glance, it looks like clearly like he had some head trauma, and that's the reason why. But again, you're talking a lot of the diagnosis that you have to do comes from communicating with the individual that's been injured.
Sure.
And you got to rely on the information you're getting from that individual. So it's a tough thing to do for doctors as well.
Well, Players Association and the league have agreed to amend the protocol. So it is going to change, if not already changed. So they're looking at that right now. It's a very serious situation. Obviously, you're dealing with, the future of this particular football player, but football players that follow him. So they really need to get this dialed in. But also you have to remember too, and you guys have mentioned it, it's a gladiator sport. There are large men running at high speeds. You're going to have concussions. And so you can only protect them so much, but they're going to try to take a look at the protocol and change it up a little bit.
Yeah, and basically the change, just to summarize, we mentioned it's ataxia, which is kind of like a loss of motor function or stumbling or loss of balance. And the previous protocol, it basically stated that if you had that, but they could determine that there was some kind of orthopedic reason, so like something structural, some kind of other injury, they'd let you come back in. And now they've removed that exception where if you stumble, if you have any kind of difficulty moving, that's it. They're not gonna take chances. And again, coming back to circling back around to the legal piece of this, they're going to protect themselves from future liability any way that they can. And then also they're going to try to protect the player safety. And so I think you're just going to see a heightening of these requirements over time, just especially as we learn more about these traumatic brain injuries and we get more information. I think you're just going to see those effects just amplified again.
The Outlaw Lawyers, Josh Whitaker, Joe Hamer, managing partners, Whitaker and Hamer Law Firm, practicing attorneys here in North Carolina. It's always legalese. We talk about it here on the program. We also have some fun and sometimes get into the sports discussion, but very serious about what's going on in the National Football League right now with concussions. We are going to come back on the other side, but we want to remind you that if you have a legal situation you're facing, you've got questions, you can always get answers by calling Whitaker and Hamer, 800-659-1186. That's 800-659-1186. Leave your contact information, briefly what that call's about, and an attorney with Whitaker and Hamer will be in touch. And you can email your questions to the program. We'll answer those on future shows. Questions@theoutlawlawyer.com. When we come back, this show is going to the pigs. That's right. We're going to talk some hogs coming up next on The Outlaw Lawyer.